Hey there, it's Steve from Serious Keto, and this is the Not So Serious Keto video podcast. In some of the other podcasts, I have shared some of the, special comments, noteworthy comments that I've gotten over the course of the week, usually something that is either mean or just ridiculous. And usually I save that till the end of the video, but I thought I would start this video and podcast with one that I got recently, which is, no one cares about you. You should just STFU and talk about keto. It's not about you. Well, actually, I kind of think the podcasts are. When it's a recipe, it's totally not about me. It's about the recipe. But the podcast, it's hard to not have it be a little bit about me. At the very least, there's going to be some of my experiences that pepper into what I'm talking about. And of course, it's my opinions and perspective and feelings on certain things, right or wrong. And I always try to express them as opinions because they aren't necessarily right, but they are mine. So it's hard to disassociate me from the podcast. And that's going to be especially true in this one where I talk about being keto in a non-keto family. And if it wasn't me and some of my personality and experiences being injected into this podcast, I might as well just be reading the news or reading a phone book. First entry, Aaron A. Aronson. So I guess if you don't like me and you don't want to hear about me, at least a little bit, then the podcasts are probably not for you. Stick to the recipe videos. One thing that I would like to hear back from all of you on, and you can, let me know down in the comments below, is periodically when I see an especially good deal on Amazon, I let you guys know in the community section, and I don't know how well notifications are working anymore on YouTube. They've done a lot of screwy things with notifications. They've turned off email notifications. So I don't know what exactly is going on with YouTube notifications, but they do seem to be a little bit unpredictable. But I digress. Periodically, I do send out notifications when I see a really good deal on something. I did it this past week on the Ninja Foodie, which I wound up buying for myself. Seemed like it might be a cool replacement for my air fryer. It's a multitasker, it's a grill, it's an air fryer, it's a dehydrator, two other things. But my question to you is, as I see deals on either good appliances, gadgets, or ingredients that I use, do you want me to post them in a notification so that you can find out about them? Full disclosure, I do get like a 1 or 2% commission from Amazon. It doesn't affect your price at all. But I don't do it because of that. I do it because it's something that I think is cool. I think it's good to have, whether it's in your keto kitchen or your keto pantry. And I want to pass that news along. So if you think that's a good thing and want me to keep doing it, just let me know down in the comments below, and I'll keep doing it. Another quick topic before we get into the being keto in a non-keto household is one that I talk about from time to time, and that's hidden carbs. And I don't love the term hidden carbs because they're not really hiding. They're there in the nutrition label if you take a look at it. It's just some things you don't expect to have carbs, and then you get home and you look at the label and you realize, holy cow, they've been sneaking some carbs in on me here. Well, not that sneaky, again, because it's on the label. An example is the Breakfast Best sausage patties. One of my viewers tipped me off to these, telling me that they have them at Aldi's and that they're just the perfect size for my McGriddles. So I thought, oh, sweet, this is way easier than making my own sausage patties. And I'm thinking sausage, it should be fine. It should be basically 0 carbs. I'm good to go. But the other day when I was getting ready to make myself a little breakfast sandwich, I actually looked at the nutritional label and the ingredients on the back, and I saw first 2 grams of carbs, which kind of surprised me. But then, as I looked at the actual ingredient list, I saw corn syrup solids, dextrose, and sugar. And then at least one thing I can't pronounce. So that kind of bums me out. I thought I had some nice little ready-to-go breakfast sausage patties, and now I realize not really, all that keto. At a bare minimum, it's dirty keto. And if you're fine with that, so be it. But it goes back to one of those things that I often say, a drum I often pound, which is you gotta be looking at the back of the box or the can or the bag, because Trusting anything that's up in big print, that's dangerous. You gotta go to the small print. Gotta be checking out those ingredients, gotta be looking at the carbs. And honestly, I'm a little embarrassed that I didn't follow my own advice in this instance. One more random tidbit before we get into the main topic of today. And I almost forgot about this, but then I looked down at my notes. Guy who eats soap is the note. The Serious Keto channel is closing in on 75,000 subscribers, which is kind of an exciting milestone. The next real big one then is 100,000. But I saw that I was getting close and I brought it up to my son, not feeling cocky, but really kind of just feeling a little bit proud, sort of excited. I wanted to share it. And he told me not to get too full of myself because there's a guy that eats soap that has like 6 million subscribers. And I went out and I looked, and his videos of him eating soap typically have about 2 million views per video. So clearly I chose the wrong calling by starting a keto channel. I should have just developed a taste for soap and started eating soap. Nah, I think I'll just stick with what I'm doing. So I'm going to throw a quick little ad break in here. I'll be right back to talk about being keto in a non-keto family. And that brings me then to the primary topic of this podcast, which is being keto in a non-keto family. I hope that I can do it in a way that doesn't sound like I'm being a complainer, but I sense that it might a little bit, so brace yourselves for that. If you've watched any number of my videos, you probably are aware that I am the only keto person in this keto household. So in addition to me, we have my wife, my son, his girlfriend, my grandson, my daughter. Yeah, that's it. So, well, and a couple of really annoying cats. But that basically means I am fairly outnumbered. The challenges that I face are, first off, they all have entirely different dietary mindsets than I do. My wife is a junk food junkie, and she just feels that she can eat whatever. She's got sort of this cavalier attitude, you gotta die of something sort of attitude. So she's gonna eat what she wants to eat and drink what she wants to drink. And although when I make a keto meal, she eats that, very often she'll accompany it with a beverage that just is the anti-keto, whether it's a Pepsi or orange juice, which is essentially the same amount of sugar. Or for dessert, she'll have a chocolate donut or some cookies, or she'll have crackers or chips or something on the side. As a result of that, that means that there is always a significant amount of junk food in my house. And that's one of the reasons why I do some of the fat bomb recipes that I do. There are the dogmatic clean keto folk that say you should never have any sweetener, not even, non-sugar sweeteners. All you're doing is feeding the addiction. To those people, I would say, first off, this is not a religion for me. Okay, this is a lifestyle, and for it to be a lifestyle, it needs to be maintainable. And one of the ways that I make it maintainable for me is I make sure that I have a keto-friendly option to all of the other junk food that's in the house. So I guess that would be tip number one. If you are keto in a non-keto household and there is lots of junk food, it's good to be able to make your own, or buy your own, but I would prefer you make your own, keto-friendly alternatives to these things. So when you find yourself headed to the cupboard for some chips or crackers, that you have instead some pork rinds available, or maybe one of my 2 recipes for keto crackers. Something that can scratch that itch for you without giving in to temptation. Because it's so easy to say, just this one time I'll have one cracker, one chip, one cookie, one brownie, whatever it is. I also keep a handful of fat bombs in the freezer or in the fridge, and I make some different keto cookies. And there have been numerous times over the past year and a half where those have kept me on the keto wagon. I believe that these things, at least for me, are necessary. I'm not going to give up on something that tastes sweet just because the keto police tell me I shouldn't have something that tastes sweet. I'm going to stick with it because it helps me stick with keto. Next, we have my son Connor, who is 20 years old. He's a certified physical trainer. He likes working out. And he's of the belief that he needs to just be putting protein and carbs into his system. and fat is bad. I'm sure a lot of us can remember when we were at that phase ourselves, so I can't blame him. That's the way I was when I was young. Then we have my son's girlfriend, Jaden, who is going to school to become a dietitian. And probably most of you just like grimaced a little bit when you heard that. This means that she and I don't see eye to eye pretty much at all in terms of the ketogenic lifestyle. And that will probably continue to be a struggle. Maybe at some point when she watches Fat Fiction or something like that, she'll come over to the right side of things. But I also understand that when she is spending hours in the classroom or now online, sort of being indoctrinated into this way of thinking, the food pyramid, the USDA guidelines for diet and nutrition, it would be very hard for her, I think, to make that transition to keto at this point, just because it's the opposite of everything she's being taught. In a way, it kind of feels like the interaction between Archie Bunker and Meathead. Was it Michael Stivitz? I can't remember. It's been years and years and years, decades since I've watched All in the Family. But instead of politics being the wedge between us, it's diet. So best we find to just not even talk about it. And then my daughter Courtney, she kind of swings from, like super healthy, or, her perception of super healthy, making smoothies and things like that, lots of vegetables, kale smoothies, to making a banana split for breakfast. So she's kind of all over the place, but not keto. And then there's my grandson Colton, who doesn't factor into this a whole lot since he's not really getting to have a lot of say in terms of what we have for food. But I am outnumbered 4-1 in terms of non-keto people to me. One of the big frustrations for me about this is, since I love to cook, and I'm also sort of a process excellence guy, still left over in my brain from 20 years of that as a career, I would love to have a nice, structured, organized pantry with all of my keto ingredients. Now, we actually have 2 different pantries. Part of that has to do with the fact that we're Costco members, and the moment you're a Costco member, you almost by default become a doomsday prepper just because you wind up buying everything in bulk. And, we were running out of space in the pantry, so I converted this media closet that was right on the edge of our kitchen and great room into a pantry. So of these 2 pantries, I would estimate that at absolute most, 20% is keto stuff. But a ton of what I need to dig through to get to my stuff is not keto. And it's frustrating for me. I see all of this food that is essentially the equivalent of the nutritional wasteland that exists in the center of a supermarket. I'm of the mindset that generally when you're shopping at a supermarket, you shop the periphery, which is where you've got produce, meat, and dairy. And so much of what we have are all these colorful packages of stuff that are just junk. It's just garbage. It is carb-laden, sugar-rich garbage. There's a certain degree of sadness that I feel every time I look in our pantry. And when I watch a documentary like Fat Fiction or Magic Pill, and I see these scenarios, they have them in all these documentaries, where people are just cleaning out the pantry and throwing stuff into the garbage, looking at the nutritional labels, looking at the ingredients, boom, into the garbage. And I would so very much love to be able to do that. But instead, I got to dig around all of this stuff. And that's, like I said, it's frustrating because it's harder to get at my stuff, but it's also frustrating because I see my family continuing to eat in a way that I believe is not healthy for them. And this gets a little bit compounded when they eat my keto snacks. So there have been situations where I'm like, hey, anybody know what happened to my moon cheese? Oh yeah, I ate it. That's my moon cheese. Well, I didn't know it was your moon cheese. I hid it up on the top shelf behind the almond flour. Did it not occur to you that maybe I was trying to segregate my keto food from the rest of the food? I mean, you've got Doritos and Cheetos and Funyuns and potato chips right over here. Why can't you eat those? Why do you got to eat my stuff? Or if you are going to eat my stuff, let's get rid of that other stuff and we can just all eat keto. And maybe if I spin that sort of positively, I could say, we could keep buying Moon Cheese and stop buying Cheetos. Maybe that's a good strategy, now that I'm thinking of it. I've mentioned before in a couple of podcasts that I'm envious of the keto couples out there. There are a handful of channels out there that have the keto couple, and what makes me envious of them is a couple of things. One, they're cooking together very often. And to me, that would just be a lot of fun. If my wife and I were cooking together and experimenting on keto stuff together, that would be neat. But my wife still, after a year and a half, doesn't fully understand what I can and cannot eat. And I don't know why that is. She'll be like, but you can eat potatoes, right? No, I can't eat potatoes. Sweet potatoes? No, not sweet potatoes. Oh, it's chicken that you can't eat. No, I can't eat chicken. And I think maybe if we actually were cooking together and had the same goal of making a keto meal together, that she'd start getting what we can and can't eat. And it's my hope that we get there at some point once we become empty nesters, that maybe then at least I can get her won over. And part of that is by making the cooking thing sort of a couples thing. It becomes sort of our little date night. Let's make a dish together and let's make it keto and see how good we can make a keto dish. So I think in terms of strategies, that would be strategy number 2. If you're keto in a non-keto household, is there another family member that you could incorporate into the keto cooking and start to win over purely from the cooking aspect and the creativity and the fun of cooking? I think that's a potential strategy. I can tell you, as it exists for me now, it's a challenge in a few different ways, the cooking aspect. The first challenge is when I'm making keto dishes, if it's not especially successful, I wind up being the only person that eats it. That slows down my progress because oftentimes I'm one meal a day or a meal and a snack a day. And if that means for 3 or 4 days I need to eat a keto recipe that I made that wasn't successful, that means it's 3 or 4 days until I make that recipe again. And by then I might be sick of it. I might not want keto pancakes anymore. So to have a partner in keto cooking that then is also my partner in keto eating would be tremendously helpful. The other challenge for cooking is with all of the other adults in this household, there is never a time when someone is not in the kitchen, making something, making food or making a mess. I don't care what time it is right now where you're watching this podcast, I guarantee you at this very moment, someone is in my kitchen making something. And it's never something simple. When I was the age of my kids, I would go into the kitchen, I'd slap together peanut butter and jelly, and I was done. That was my sandwich. It took me a couple minutes, done. My kids apparently got some of my kitchen creativity genes, and I find that they make some elaborate stuff for breakfast and for lunch. The sandwiches my son makes, he will roast vegetables for a sandwich, and then roast beef and some other stuff. Like very elaborate. He'll make a custom condiment. I'm surprised he's not baking his own bread. But long story short, every time someone goes in to prep something in the kitchen, I can expect them to be in there for a solid half hour or more making food, even on a simple meal like breakfast or lunch. And that poses a couple challenges for me. First, it limits the amount of time that I can be in the kitchen experimenting on keto recipes or especially filming. But the other challenge, and this probably affects those of you that do fasting, 1 meal a day or a 16-8 or a 24, I can fast very easily when I'm not in the presence of food, when I'm not seeing food, when I'm not smelling food. But in this house, I'm pretty much always seeing or smelling food. And I don't know if that can go away until such time as my kids move out and my wife and I become empty nesters. So I'm going to share a couple of the other strategies that I use, and then after I'm done, I'm going to ask you, what are some of your strategies? What works for you if you are keto in a non-keto household? One of the things that I do is I went to Office Depot and I bought this big whiteboard, and then I got a label maker, and I went to AutoZone and I got some black pinstriping tape, and I divided it up into a weekly calendar. And we've got each of the days of the week, and then down below that is who's going to be here for dinner. If we're going to have another friend of the family over, we put a little plus in their name, like plus Jack. If somebody's not going to be here, minus Courtney, minus Connor. So I know who's going to be here for any given meal. And then we plan out the meals. Sometimes I ask for family input, sometimes I just write things down. And if I'm in control of the dinner menu, which especially, for me, that's the main meal that I eat, then I can be in control of a lot of my own keto. I'll give my kids or my son and his girlfriend one of the cookbooks, and I'll say, flip through this, find me 3 things that really look interesting to you. And then I'll go through and I'll see which one of them is closest to keto and that can get there with the least amount of modification, and maybe they won't even know that they're eating keto. I also think through then what additional stuff may go with this meal in terms of side dishes, and make sure that we have that sort of keto alternative in the house. So if it's something that might go with mashed potatoes, make sure that I've got some cauliflower so I can make some mashed cauliflower. Fortunately, my family really likes cruciferous vegetables. They like broccoli, they like asparagus, so that's typically a win. But making sure that we have keto-friendly alternatives for desserts, snacks, side dishes, etc. I think another critical element to staying keto in a non-keto household is that you, or me, as the keto person, needs to be the one that does the grocery shopping. That is one of the best places where we can exert control over the things that are in our fridge and in our pantry and in the cookie jar. I just don't foresee my wife or kids wanting to go and make a special run to the grocery store just to get some Pepsi or cookies or Cheetos. And while that's not necessarily going to magically turn them keto, what it does do is it keeps some of this other stuff out of the house. And also I believe that every little bit that we can get out of this house in terms of the garbage carbs means that they're going to be eating a little bit less of it and eating a little bit more healthy. If you are trying to convert a family member, figuring out what is their weakness, what is the thing that they just love to eat or drink. For example, for my wife, she is just an absolute Pepsi addict. And I don't know if I can convert her. I think Pepsi makes something like a Coke Zero type product. I mean, who knows what the sweetener is in it, but at least it's not sugar. Ideally though, I think if I could convert her over, maybe get a soda stream or something like that, where I can just get some stevia sweet drops, like cola flavored, and maybe somehow have her come over to that. I don't know if it's the sugar or the caffeine or the mouthfeel or a combination of all of those that she enjoys, but I see Pepsi and orange juice as being 2 of the biggest things that I need to overcome with her. And certainly if you have any suggestions for either of those 2 to help me out, that would be great. I know that she loves my keto cookies and the fat bombs, and that once the kids are out of the house, I think I can probably convert her to keto if we can just get past soda and juice. I think for my kids, I don't know that, at that age when you're young and indestructible and think you know everything, that anyone's going to convert you. I know that I, at age 20, knew everything, and that there was no way anyone was going to tell me different. So I can't fault them for falling into that as well. At some point, though, they may hit a point where they're starting to put on some pounds and wondering why, and they see that their dad, who was fat all of his adult life, is still slim, living on this keto diet, is still healthy, and living a great life, and looking younger than ever before. Maybe at that point, they come and they say, Dad, how did you do this? I want to know how to do keto. It's my hope that someday we get there. But now it's your turn. I would like to know if you have had any difficulties, or if you yourself have suggestions that you can share, situations that you've managed to overcome with your non-keto family, either that help you to stay keto or help you convert a family member. I think this is going to be a fun time down in the comment section below. Now, before I end, some of you might be thinking, well, Steve, if you have these feelings, have you shared them with your wife? And I try to, but it's still sort of a tough persuasive argument to make. What's interesting though is the other night while I was lying in bed, eyes closed, starting to doze, I hear my own voice. And not like in my brain. It's not like I'm hearing voices. I'm actually hearing my own voice. And I lean over and I look at my wife and I see that she's got her phone and she's watching my podcast. It's a very surreal situation to be lying in bed next to your spouse and he or she is watching a pre-recorded thing of you. But here I am, and my wife is watching 20 minutes of me just talk. So maybe this is the way that I get through to, oh, no pun intended, this is the way that I get through to her about how I would love it if she would join me in keto cooking, give up the Pepsi, give up the juice. What do you say, dear, if you're watching? Crazy that we live in a world now where we use social media to communicate with our own spouses. What you gonna do? But that's it for this podcast. As always, thank you for watching or listening.